Hemshech Chaim Beis, Volume 1, from the beginning of Maimer 29, Pod V'Shalom Nafshi, of Shabbos Pasha V'Esh, of Chav Kislev, 100 years ago, Tafrei Shayin Gimel. I also would suggest everybody should look at the Teirah Shalom, the Sichos of Yutas Kislev, Tafrei Shayin Gimel. Pretty heavy stuff. 100 years ago, the Rebbe, this was said on Shabbos, and that's if I bring in Motzei Shabbos, the Rebbe Rashab had. It speaks about the Alter Rebbe, pretty unbelievable stuff there. It talks Eretz and Kalim, what a Rebbe is, in words of Eretz and Kalim. And Atzmi in Akeli Atzmi, that's the words he uses. So I think it's connected to some of the ideas here. But anyway, we began the discourse, Padr Shalom, beginning of the chapter Kuf Yud Gimel, 113, page Resh Yud Ches, Resh Yud Tes. So I'll begin from the Kuf Yud Gimel, even though we began the chapter, but it's worthwhile reading again.
Resh Yud Tes is 200 years in the Sittas Kislev.
There you go. Everything's got hints. But let me sum up where we are, and then we'll continue. Summary is that we're in a longer discussion, which is, like I said, pretty rare for Ayin Beis, because Ayin Beis was written, as we know, one long flow of ideas. And then the Rebbe Rashab added the beginnings and ends, as he delivered it, the connections to the weekly Pasha, or whatever, the discourse, or the Yom Tov, so on. So like Padr Shalom was added later, and the end of the Maimer. But, as an exception, the chapter of Vayetze, the Pasha, this episode of Yaakov and Lavan, with the placing of the stone as a monument or pillar, or what Lavan did, the stone as a mound, becomes a central theme in the last, how many chapters, from the end of Maimer Vayetze, basically from Kuf Zayin. So already in Kuf Yud Gimel, there's still a few more chapters to go. So it's a good 10 chapters, close to 10 chapters, just explaining Yaakov and Lavan in the Pasha. But he's explaining the idea that he's in the middle of, which is, it's a subplot in a subplot. There's a lot of subplots going on here. The main subplot is the three meanings in Spheres. So it's mitzvah, number, and then sipur, the narrative, and then he began the discussion from the word Evan Sapir, which, as I said, it may not be a sapphire stone. It's more of a brilliant, luminous, transparent white stone. Maybe there is a sapphire, depends what level. We talked about that, the red stone, the white stone. But regardless, it's transparent. And it's reflecting the idea of spheres as being transparent channels. This is actually the theme of the Sikh of Yutas Kislev 100 years ago. He speaks about the Alter Rebbe like that. That he's a Atzmi, but not just an Atzmi, he's an Atzmi that went into Kalim. He speaks about how Atzmi manifests in the Keli. It's unbelievable words. If you read that, it's like he spoke about the Alter Rebbe, about the Alter Rebbe, on all levels, that he was both at the level of being Atzmi and a Shama Klolis, and also he speaks about his wisdom as in the world, worldly wisdom. So it's worthwhile seeing. It's a good fabringen to read Teirah Shalom. If you want to fabringen, just read that. So what's the point here? The point... Yeah, Teirah Shalom is informal, the Rebbe Rashab speaking off the record, basically. It's a Shebrew, it's a mix. Yeah, anyway, so bottom line... I recommend it all the time. It can change your whole perspective on everything. Because it's informal. It's the Rebbe speaking, the Rebbe Rashab speaking off the record, these ideas. He speaks things that he doesn't say in a mimer. He'll give you that additional touch. So anyway, let me just explain. What is Eretz and Kalim? Let's speak a little simple English here, because from time to time we got to ground it. You have to explain Eretz v'Kalim to a simple person, to each of us. What is Eretz v'Kalim?
Did he finish the third narrative about Sipur?
No, he's going to go back.
Here, we finished that already?
No, he's going to go back to it. Yeah, there's plenty more to go. No. Anyway, so the point of Eretz and Kalim, among all the other things that say the Shtalshus, Eretz and Kalim is really the Kabbalistic terminology, and cannot be confused with what we consider to be bottles and water or something, or other types of containers and liquids. Eretz and Kalim are simply an expression from Chassidus that's referring to, and Kabbalah, that refers to what is called in modern lingo form and function, or body and soul, or quantity or quality, or inner and outer. So it's really a way of describing anything that exists you can always determine and define it in terms of Er and Keli. And I'll just give a few examples. The pages, the words on a page is the Kelim. The idea they convey is the Er. I speak words is the Kelim. The idea behind that is the Er. You embrace somebody is a Keli. The love behind it is an Er. I challenge anyone to show me something that doesn't have an Er and a Keli. Everything in existence has an Er and Keli. So the first way to dissect anything, any situation, is it the Kelim that we're dealing with or the Er? An example. Two people are not getting along with each other. Is it the Kelim, their way of expressing, or they fundamentally have differences? Sometimes it's just maybe just different cultures. Maybe you mean one thing, I mean another, and we're not really disagreeing. Sometimes we are disagreeing on a fundamental level. So there's a big difference between a Er and a Keli. And because we're very one-dimensional, very narrow-minded, frankly, and not trained to think properly and look at a problem properly, we just look at a problem and say, oh, it's a problem. It's not a problem. It depends where the problem is. If you go to a doctor and you say, I have a pain right here in my finger, God forbid, the pain could be on a skin problem. The pain could be a nerve problem. The pain could be on a much deeper level, maybe a reflection of a far deeper problem. How do you know? So just because something is painful or something is not working doesn't mean it's on all levels. It could be a purely container level. It can be an air level. When you talk on a psychological level, someone has, let's say, anxiety. Is anxiety on a Kalim level, on an air level, or where the air meets the Kali? And remember, in Eres and Kalim itself, there are many levels, which I'm not even getting into. There's Primis HaKalim, Chusein HaKalim, Mtsoyes HaKali, the middle, outer, and inner levels of a Kali. And the same thing there. There's Primis HaEr, Chusein HaEr. But I don't want to get too confusing. The first basic principle is that everything has an Er and Keli, and every issue in life, you can look at it that way. Now, in the broader sense of the word, when you speak on the cosmic order, God's relationship with existence, that's where it all began. Because God created, first everything began as energy, and then energy manifests in matter. See, we work the other way around. How do you know you're hungry? Because your body tells you I'm hungry. But that's your body's reminding you that you need some sustenance. You look at a piece of food, the container of the food is bread, water, fruit. The energy of the fruit is what it turns into when you digest it and turns into your blood. Then one food will give you other energy, different vitamins and minerals than another food. No one sees that. We only know it. Today we know that an orange has these and these vitamins. So everything has an outer and an inner. And obviously the ultimate goal in life is to have them aligned. If your outer and inner were aligned, you have no problems. Okay? Now, what is, for example, you look at a newborn healthy child, everything's working perfectly. They breathe perfectly. You can see the chest heaving up and down. The air in Keli is perfect. The air goes in, the lungs completely absorb it, breathe it out. Look how we breathe. How often do you take a deep breath in? You do. It usually causes you to cough because we have toxins inside us. Our blood doesn't flow as smoothly. Everything about us, our eyesight, as we age, our kelim wear down. As they wear down, the energy doesn't flow the same way. Now, before Chet Tzadas, the reason that it says that if they hadn't eaten from the tree, they would live forever was not a miracle. That was the way it was. Not. Death is an aberration. Not well. Why would a soul that has infinite amount of life power ever have to leave a body? Imagine putting a liquid in a cup. Except for evaporation, why should it ever have to leave the cup? The answer is if the cup gets punctured. If it's punctured, okay, then the water will leak out. The body, by Chet Tzadas, got punctured. Psychologically, spiritually speaking. So now the body is no longer aligned with God. So after a while, the soul will seep out, so to speak. But the body will, think of it as an appliance that will break down, and this neshama can no longer stay there. Not because the neshama got weaker. As a matter of fact, the neshama gets stronger as it goes. Because the neshama is driven by spiritual energy. The point I'm making here is that in every possible way, the idea of Eris and Kalim can be spoken about in health, in physics, in science, even in literature, in communication, in relationships. There's no area in life, education. It's all about Eris and Kalim. Now, Eris and Kalim obviously a broad term. Then there's a difference between what about Er and Keli and a Chesed. That's already speaking about how your love has an Er and a Keli. Some people are very, very loving people. They just don't know how to communicate it. I've seen this. I've helped some couples where one person is very loving, but he just was never trained how to say it. Doesn't know how to say thank you. Doesn't remember. And the feelings are all there. Wasn't that? And then sometimes you have people who are very cordial and say everything right, but they don't have the feelings. So you can have an Er without a Keli, you have a Keli without an Er. Or you can have a Keli that's immature. It's not developed enough. Which is what happens when we say a person goes into an adult. Why can't children have relationships? Why doesn't children get married? Because they don't have yet the kelim for the eris of intimacy, basically. That's really what it comes down to. So everything can be defined in terms of maturity and so on. And then you go to each one. Then there's the Erin Keli of Chochmah, there's the Erin Keli of Bina, there's the Erin Keli of Das, Erin Keli of Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. This is when it gets obviously, I'm talking now like almost the 101. I'm starting with just what Erin Keli is. The next class would be what's Chesed, what's Gvura. Then the next level is what's the difference in Atzilus, Erin Keli of Chesed and Atzilus, and Erin Keli of Chesed and Bria, and what's the difference Chesed in Yitzirah. So you see there's a lot of levels here. But the basic principle begins first with knowing there's Erin Keli. They need to be aligned. Then there's the issue of, different in Chesed, it's expressed through love. You can have, for example, your Chesed Erin Keli can be very well aligned, but your Erin Keli Gvura are messed up. And then it manifests in each world has its own so-called personality. So obviously Atzilus is the most aligned world, where Eris and Kelim Iyu v'chayu echad. He is one with his energies and one with his containers. Meaning there's a full alignment going on. It's an aligned structure. Just one second, let me just finish. So when we say the word Sphira, as we explained at length, means both Er and Keli. So there's Sphiras and Eres, there's Sphiras and Kelim, and it's ultimately a combination of both of them. But the big part of the discussion was, what does a Sphira do? Does it reveal the structure, or does it reveal even beyond the structure? And that's where it goes into the whole discussion of the different meanings in Sphiras, whether it's Mispar. In number, for example, the more focus is on the Kelim, on let's say how many letters are on the page. But if you ask somebody the content of the page, they won't tell you. I don't even know how many letters. I just can tell you the idea that's on the page. That's more of a so to speak. Then there's Sphiras as they are more story. They tell a story. In a story, the focus is a little more on than on Keli. When I tell you a story, it's not so much the words I use, it's the message of the story. And then, of course, there's where we're up to now, Evan Sapir, which is the highest level, where the Keli is complete transparent channel for the Eris. It's like when you're reading a book, you don't even notice the words. You're so immersed in the idea, you don't even realize you're turning pages, for that matter. So all that is now in Evan Sapir, where we are now, he's discussing. He began Evan Sapir, to explain Evan Sapir, he went into the difference between Keiches and Levushim. So faculties and garments. So faculties are transparent, in essentially they are attached and revealers of the soul. Our faculties, whether it's Chochmah, Bina, Chesed, and so on. Then you have Levushim, which already are garments that you put onto the garments, so to speak. Meaning that with garments you put onto the body and into your faculties. That's already Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, or actual physical garments, which are concealers. So in a healthy structure, we need garments too, because garments are already, for example, if the letters on the page are kelim, and the ideas are the eris, you know what garments are? Examples that the teacher, that I'm giving you right now, that go beyond what it says here. An example that's used is already an example coming from outside the er and keli, but it's helping you understand through the keli, the er. Some people, you just give them the keli and the er, it's not enough. You need to go one step further. You need to give them an example, and sometimes an example from a completely foreign entity than what you're discussing, because they don't know what spirituality is yet. So you have to give an example from something they relate to. And as we said, levushim can take on the shape even of parsois, curtains. And curtains are disorganized letters, like a riddle, and metaphors, where the letters are not even in an organized way. But their also goal is to reveal. And then comes the parsas, which will begin to become real concealers. The difference between the parsas before Atzilus, the first interpretation, how Lovin is higher than Atzilus. And the parsha there, the curtain is to bring the bli gvul of Keser into the gvul of Atzilus. And then there's the parsha after Atzilus. That already is a concealer that actually begins creating an independent entity that can feel that it's on its own. And Lovin's intention is to put as many garments as possible so there should be no flow. Basically disconnecting the student from the teacher. It's my domain, I don't want you to be here. Essentially it's no bittul, not wanting to have anything that's divine. It would be a person, let's say, I'm trying to read you a story from the book, and this person is trying to make sure you don't get the message. So he'll make sure to put all kinds of blocks and all kinds of distortions to stop the flow from happening. So blocking any type of awakening, or any type of Yisrael, any type of feeling, like he said, blocking the ability to do tshuva even. Lovin is the main enemy against Baalei Tshuva. That's what he said.
Distractions are like masach.
Yeah, but that's already the additional. And so to speak, the battle between Yaakov and Lavan is Yaakov wants to have a flow and wants to bring levels of energy that are coming not only from the Gvul, he wants you to reveal even the deepest levels of the Gvul. But he also does it through channeling it. That's the point of Nakuda Malchus. So he takes Malchus, which is just a point, like the moon, as it begins, develops it into a matzeva, the stone into a marker, into a pillar, and then that pillar becomes Yila Beis Elikim, will be something that will reveal the Bli Gvul, which we're going to be discussing. And Lavan is interested in stopping that flow. So really, we're talking about is, as I've said many times, almost like 4 steps when you go from the bottom up. We start in a concealed world, in a world that's dominated by Lavan. We don't see too much. We live in an agnostic universe, and very easy to deny there's anything more than what's here and now. Instant gratification. I'm starting very basic. But there's a sense in every person there's more. I'm not going to get into how we get there or not, but let's, for argument's sake, you climb the ladder and you realize there's something inside these garments here. This isn't just, the material world is just a surface level. You realize, okay, these are very thick veils, and you try to pierce the doors of perception, and you go and realize there's something behind. This is basically climbing from Asiya to Yitzira to Bria, and then you realize not only there's something behind, but what's behind the door is even more important than what's on this side. What we see is just pure surface. It's literally the tip of the iceberg. Not even that. So then you move your way forward, your way inward, so to speak, and you continue to pierce the layers. This is Mamat Lamaila. So that's the way we work. You come to realize that there's not only Levushim, there's also Kalim. So you realize, and it's like, think of it like this, and maybe a good example. You walk in the forest, you can see lot of overgrowth, thorns, bushes, weeds, the whole works. You start clearing away, and you see a stone there. You look at the stone, it's covered with moss. You start clearing off the moss, and you see there's letters. 1 second, there's letters. Now you start clearing even more, and you see there's words. And there's a message for you. It's a perfect example of a person going from darkness to... So what you got? The Levushim closed the whole thing off. You didn't even know there was anything there. Then you finally saw letters, Kalim. Then the Kalim tell you there's a story, there's words, and the words tell you there's a message. So then there's the words, and the words tell you a message. Now what's the message they tell you? They can just tell you a simple message that there's a God in this world, or that you have a soul, or there's a higher purpose. So it says, first they tell you there's a message. That's like the Mekudah of Malchus. The first thing that tells you there's more. What's more? First it tells you there's more Gvul. There's not only, what you're seeing is not just Malchus, there's also Yesod, there's Hoid, Netzach, Teferes, Gvura, Chesed, all the way Chachma Bina. Okay. Does that stop? No. Then the story, we said Sipur, tells you that there is a source for that. There's unconscious. There's Bli Gvul. And the Bli Gvul, of course, tells you many more things. That God is not, the artist is not defined. The one who put the stone here with the letters and the message has more messages that are not on this stone. So all this was concealed, and you're working your way all the way to the Bli Gvul part. And then you come to realize that the whole thing, the whole existence, is just really a transparent channel to reveal to you, first of all, the powers of Gvul of Elikus, and then the powers of Bli Gvul, and even beyond. That's just an example of like Levushim, Kalim, Eris, and then an Eris itself as it climbs upward. What we're discussing now is Yaakov basically first taking the stone, a raw stone. Well, actually, it was several stones that were arguing, and they finally become one. So that's like the world of Pirid. Many different stones. He didn't talk so much about that yet. We will talk about it. Then he turned the stones into one. They turned into one. Then that one stone he rested on, and then afterwards he made it into a matzeva, a pillar. So that signifies that Malchus is starting to be lifted up from its fallen state, which is its darker state, lack of awareness and so on, that we discussed, like Golus. And then that pillar will in turn become ultimately an Even Sapir, illuminating stone, not just a pillar. That pillar will become a stone that will be part of the Beis Hamikdash, and will reveal Bli Gvul. That's in a certain way of explaining where we're at right now. And now where we're now, he's moving from not just Hakamas HaMalchus, not just the beginning of taking Malchus to the next level, But you'll see how Malchus connects with the higher spheres. So if you really talk about it, the spheres and all these things that are discussed here is really like, if you think about it, it's like cryptic code language. Someone reads this, they won't necessarily come to what I just said. But this is a model. This is a formula of how to grow. Simple as that. And you have to know that every second. The Rebbe Rashab did not spend even 5 minutes, let alone how many thousands of hours he must have spent writing this. He wrote every word here to talk about esoteric elements. He's giving us a blueprint of how to grow. And he's writing it for people like us. He wasn't just writing it for the biggest chassidim. We learn it. But it's written in a language that unless you're told, this is your story, your life, it becomes, cryptic, it becomes a purish, maybe an explanation of the pasuk. It's a beautiful explanation, but it all comes down to the relevance to our personal lives. So that's why from time to time we have to just ground things into what does it mean and how do you turn it into a model. And it's quite clear actually when you think about it. So the word sphere, we use sphere so much that it's almost meaningless. Like any word. What does sphere mean? But when you start thinking sphere, one second, sphere is illuminating. Sphere is a story. Sphere is a number. It takes on a different meaning. It's not just some sphere. Ask most people, what are Esses spheres? Right away, you either go into that like automatic pilot mode. Esses spheres, those are the chesed, the chachma, bina, das, chesed, people know by heart the 10 spheres. Or what some people call building blocks, DNA. They're all correct. But we're talking about what does it mean to use spheres. You know what spheres are? 10 levels in your life. 10 faculties right now working in yourself. Right now, 24/7, these 10 spheres are at work in you. Whether you're aware of it or not is another story. Because the spheres can be buried. Like you look in Tanya, he says the Yud sphere is in Perek Vav. Read Perek Vav, the Haggadah, now after this class. You'll see how powerful it is. He writes there how the spheres go into klippas. So he says, even in the deepest klippa, you have the 10 spheres that are in it, are the 10 spheres of Yitzira, and there they're the 10 spheres of Bria, and there the 10 spheres of Atzilus, and it's all concealed in the klippa. So right now, when you're touching something, you don't even know. All you're doing is touching the surface. But think of it like I gave the example with the forest and the moss and the stone. In anything you do, there's all these spheres and all the worlds. They're all there right there in front of you, ready for you to release them. All the way to Ak and Lifnei Tzimtzum. All the way. Everything is right there, every second, in everything you do. And that's why the move you make is not just, you asked me what it means to put on tefillin once. You know what it means? It means to connect everything from this lowest of worlds all the way to Atzmos. I think that's a pretty big achievement. How many people do that, in their lifetimes, let alone in a second? You do a mitzvah, you're basically like you're closing a circuit. It's like electricity flow. It goes all the way from top to bottom. What is it called when you switch on the switch? You open the circuit. Does it close the circuit? It's like, what is a switch? A switch closes a circuit and then allows the flow to continue. So it ripples through all of existence. Now, we may not see it, but that's why you have all these stories of tzaddikim. They looked at someone who brought an esrog, and they saw how much passion he had, and the Baal Shem Tov would start dancing. That one little act, he realized what it was doing. Because you see the whole flow of energy. So it's not just some like a miraculous story. It's the story of energy, as opposed to
Spheres are on oil also?
Yeah. They're more subtle in oil. He spoke at length about this, but there's spheres in oil also. Anyway, I still want to say one or two more things, but no. Now I'm ready to go ahead. Huh?
That's why we started the whole discussion with Sapir, Sipur, and because of the Eris.
Of course, yeah.
Everybody might know this, but I just want to be sure. The auras of one level are kalim of higher levels.
Well, I didn't say that. Why do you have to say that?
No, you didn't say that. In fact, I thought that was something that was the case. Because it seems like that to me.
There's an aspect of that's correct, and an aspect that's not correct. You're getting now into understanding the deeper meaning of Ir and Keli. But I said, for example, here, the letters on this page are Kelim. The Irs are the ideas. So here it wouldn't work. How would you make the letters into Irs?
Because the ideas you're talking about are Kelim versus essential motivating separate.
Okay, if you want to go that, then that's fine. But then remember this.
Something like this.
But how does that change anything?
I just wanted to, for my understanding.
See, you're going back to being academic. You tell me the relevance of that in our lives. Well, by knowing what you just said, I know exactly what you're talking about. He's saying essentially that even the Eris on this page, you go to a deeper person, and he'll see that as also as Kalim. Fine. And how does that help?
deeper level.
So how does that help us?
Because if you refine the path more and more and more,
Okay.
It's a jump off. Like first when you gave the mushroom.
I got it. Good. Very good. No problem. So then I totally accept what you're saying. That's correct. But you have to remember, the plot thickens, because there comes a point that the question is, what gives Kalim any substance? At some point, do Kalim and Ur meet, that the Kalim becomes the Ur? That's the question. The answer is no and yes. In other words, all the way, when you root it all the way up, yes, it's true, relatively speaking, for one person the words here is Ur, for another person these words are Kalim. Or in other words, the ideas rather. The ideas here are Eris, and in other words is Kalim. But when you go all the way up, there is a place that Kalim and Eris are two different paths, even in the most subtle form. In other words, let's put it this way, if you go in Atzmus, it'll be the power to conceal, the power to reveal, or maybe the power to express in shape, and the power to express in shapelessness. You understand? There's a lot of, one is maybe, for example, Ur has the power that expresses you the message, the spirit of the messenger, of the teacher. And Kalim gives you the purpose of the message, of the messenger, the source. So you need both. So my point is, it's correct what you're saying. There is that element, but for all practical purposes, when you say Keli of Chesed and Ur of Chesed, you're not saying that the Keli of Chesed becomes an Ur on a different level. You could say that the Urus of Bria are like Kalim for Atzilus. In that sense, you could say it, but it's not so simple, because sometimes it says the Kalim of Bria come from the Kalim of Atzilus, not from the Ur. If you want to go to all Chassidus, you're going to find many of different contradictions that you're going to have to reconcile. You just mentioned the ones you know. I'll mention another 5. So, and I'm saying, if you want to reconcile
It's a relative concept. You say it's relevant until it reaches the absolute beginning.
It's relative and not relative. That's what I'm trying to say.
Basically, it's different forms.
Because bottom line is, for example, I'll give you an example where it's not relative. In the Beis HaMikdash, you could have all the intentions in the world. If you don't do the act, you don't have the Kalim. It doesn't matter what level you're on. You have to have the physical Keli. When they brought an offering on a Mizbeach, it wasn't enough to think about a Mizbeach. You needed a Mizbeach. We have a Beis HaMikdash today, Ruchnis. You need a physical Beis HaMikdash. So you see there, a Keli is not a relative thing. If it's not here physically, there's something lacking. That's why I'm resisting just making this. But on the other hand, there is something to say that Kalim of a lower level, the Iris of a lower level, are Kalim on a higher. I'm just distinguishing. There's two. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
You're saying in other words, it's different function, like you said, full unbelievable.
Yeah, but there is an element of that, because when you climb higher, a Keli is ultimately a form of energy as well, but it's a containing form of energy. In other words, let's put it this way. It's like, remember we talked about the Igulim, that all the Igulim are connected to the first Igul? All the Kalim are connected to the higher Kalim. Then there's an element how a Keli is more Ur. You're really breaking down Keli. What you're talking about is more the Ur and the Keli. What I'm talking about is more the Keli and the Keli. If you know what I'm trying to say. There's two different aspects to it. Okay, I wanted to...
This whole discussion started over here, and it says Lahavin Zet Sarach Lavin Tchila Ma'u Shem Svira. What? That's where he started. The question he said.
The whole discussion began in the first question that he hasn't answered. How are there Sviras in Bligvul?
Yeah.
In Makifim. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Not in Eir. No. In Eir it was answered already. In Eir is HaMakifim. No, it's a different thing. Eir he explained. He's asking now how in the Eir HaBligvul there's Sviras.
In your summation, you said there were 2 more things you wanted to add.
I wanted to say something in regard to what someone was asked earlier about more how Lovan and Yaakov work. I spoke how it is Mamat Lamayl, from the bottom up. Yaakov, however, is not doing it from the bottom up, he's doing it from the top down, as we learned. If you remember, in the last chapter, he said something like that. What did he say? Huh? Now, what did he say? He said exactly this question. I'm sure. You remember this part that he said it's Mamat Lamayl or Mayl Lamata? Yeah. Right. Right, exactly, thank you. Right. Because he asked the question. Yaakov starts with the Berurim of love and that Chacham and Bina, and then he comes to the Berurim lower of Esav, right? Vagam the Berurim the Achshav, even though the Berurim the Achshav begin lower, and La'asilov will be the higher ones. He says, okay, that one line is a critical line. That answers your question somewhat. Not answers. I mean, so here's the story. This is very, very important in general. I want to connect everything I just said now to Chumash, to the story in Torah. The Mittler Rebbe says something really powerful in Torah's Chaim, several places in the Sefer Bereshis. If you look at Torah, there's one key difference between the first Sefer and the other four. The most obvious is the time period. The first Sefer Bereshis covers almost 2,000 years. Till the time Yaakov and his children pass away, and then starts Galus Mitzrayim, which is approximately the year 2000. Avraham Avinu was born 1948. It's a little more than 2100 probably. Okay, 2100 years, the first Sefer. The next four Sfarim cover 40 years. I'm not talking about the Galus itself. The Galus is 210 years, which is also relatively 210 compared to 2100. But from Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is Pasha Boy, Shmois V'Eira is the Galus Mitzrayim. Okay, fine. So let's say that's 210 years. Boy, which is also 2 chapters, the whole Galus. But after Boy, middle of Boy, when they leave Mitzrayim, till the end of Vazei Sabracha, that we read on Simchas Torah, is 40 years. So that's a pretty interesting disproportion here, right? So the Mittler Rebbe just asks this question and answers it with a very fascinating way, and it's only understood up Chassidus, of course, because
it's not 210 years. That was in Vaychi, but it's from 80, from when Moshe was born.
Okay, so even less. Okay, right, so even better, right? So 80 years old, which would be so it's 80 years.
80 years, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the first few psukim maybe. You don't really have in Torah
that they're coming down the names of them.
No, but I'm talking about the beginning when he plots to this till Moshe is born. There's a lot of years right there.
It's around 80 also because it's 210.
Why are you saying no? No. They came down until Moshe was born is 130 years.
No, but Yecheved, she was.
I'm not talking about the first pasuk. Then it says that Pari said, "Let's enslave them." Yeah. From that enslavement till Moshe was born is 130 years. That's what I'm telling you. So 130 years is covered in just a few verses, basically. Maybe. Okay, fine. That's more being technical. But the point of the being is that most of the time, so the Mittler Rebbe says something. It's brilliant. It's so when you hear it, it's like it makes total sense. He says the main Torah begins obviously with Yetzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah, because that's when we become a nation. Then and actually that's when we get the mandate of what to do with our lives. Build a Mishkan, Shchanti B'Sei, our mission, so to speak. However, nobody comes unarmed. You have to come in with all the power. So Bereshis, Sefer Bereshis, is as its name implies, Bereshis. It's a Genesis. He calls it Sefer HaYashar, the Gemara calls it. The story of Avram, Yitzchak, Yankov. They're the ones, they are like the ancestors that gave us the power to do the Aveda that begins after Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the Bereshis only talks about the powers that we need to get. It's not here to tell us what happened all those 2,000 years. It's not relevant to our lives. Though much happened. What's only told to us are like he puts it like this, it's like the blueprint for the other 4 books. It's like the chinuch. So it's like going to school. So Avram is chesed, and Yitzchak is gvura, and Yaakov is teferes. It's laying out all the powers that we will have. That's why Maisa Av is similar banim. Which of course explains another fundamental question. Why was the Torah not given to Adam and Chava in a formal way? Even though we know they kept the Torah before it was fulfilled and all that. Why not just give? We read the Chum, Rashi says, Bereshis b'shvil Yisrael b'shvil HaTorah. God created the world for the Torah. Why does He wait 200 years till that happens? 26 generations. The general answer for it is because it was like this. It's like why are we not bar mitzvah when we're born? We don't become Mutzuva v'Eisa. You don't become committed, obligated until you're mature enough. You need first chinuch. You're trained. So by the time you're ready, it's like training before you go to war. Then the war begins. Where does the war begin? In the book of Shmos. That's where the life really begins. And before that is like a state of chinuch. Basically, even halachically, Rabbi Yosef Engel and others right, when they talk about what's the category of the ovis before Matan Torah, many of them say it's like the category of a cotton before Bar Mitzvah. And we're talking about obligation-wise. We're not talking about the spiritual status. Obviously, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov were a high level, but that was their souls were on a high level. We're talking about their category. Some even call them categorically. They could even be considered b'nei Noach, because that's why the Jews had to go through a mikveh through Gerus. All the laws of conversion is Matan Torah. But what's the point? Cotton should go neidel dummy because Matan Torah is essentially a new status. So there's discussions on Nigla, and the Rebbe brings about it, what mitzvahs they were obligated to do. But spiritually speaking, their role was primarily laying the ground. It's almost like the pioneers that paved the way. Like when Yaakov says, why did they have to go down to Mitzrayim and all these things? It was like giving the koyach. So with that, you really understand a few words that he said here before 9 Beis. If you remember, he said Yaakov began the Hamshach of Matan Torah. Look at the end of Vayetze. Remember? He says, Yisrei, Moshe finished it. But that's also, if you learn Bas Lagani, what's the story of Bas Lagani? When we learn Bas Lagani, 7 generations. Avram brought the Shekhinah down to the 6th heaven. After 7 generations, after Chet Tzadas, this is essentially the story of before Matan Torah. The Chet Tzadas, as I mentioned, pierced the Kalim. It created a split. So it says the Shekhinah, which was down below. We learned this before, how in the beginning of creation, it was all connected. Everything was united. Then, the first sin left the Shekhinah, so there was like it's called the dissonance began. The birth of dissonance. Okay? Then comes generation 2, up. Until the day before Avram, it says all the way it's the farthest distance. Then Avram brings it down 1, Yitzchak, Yaakov, 7 generations, Moshe, the Kiyah La'aretz, V'shachanti B'sechem. The way it was, B'tchila. So what's the role of the Ovis till Moshe? Is giving us the Koyach, Ruchnius, because they didn't bring it down to earth. Only Mitzvah Milah was a physical mitzvah. So they were spiritual. Basically, think of the Ovis and the work in Sefer Bereshis as being the pregnancy and the chinuch of the child, of Klal Yisrael. The pregnancy we learn Kol HaTorah Kula. The Ovis did Kol HaTorah Kula. But it's not, you can't say how we learn Torah, the whole Torah in your mother's womb is, you don't have to make Birchas HaTorah in it, and it's not in the category of Mitzvahs Limud HaTorah. Because it's more Masbiyan, it's more the empowering. So everything the Ovis did, the Ramban writes, Ma'aseh Ovis, everything they did was in order to pave the way. It's like a father paves the way and then gives the company to the children who can really take it to the next level. So the Kavanah is, Matan Torah brings it down to earth and the real work begins. But the Ovis that's basically, it's unbelievable take on Bereshis and the Ovis. It just gives you a good picture of the Torah in another way. And then, of course, starts the real work after Golus, where we are today, which has taken all of that. So when you look at the Ovis, every story that happened with them was really a paving of the way. It's a taste of what would come later, but not the full thing. Like chinuch, like little chinuch. You teach your child negelvasser, you teach your child the Shem Moedan, you teach your child manners. What you're doing is you're setting the stone that when he's ready and he's mature enough, he already has. If you start chinuch at 13, you're going to have maybe a person who's adult, but he's going to be completely immature, he's going to be completely undisciplined. He won't. That's why mitzvah's chinuch is so much discussion. Without chinuch, you can't have the rest. But chinuch itself is still only a training period. And of course, you all know the Sifri the Rebbe brings about asud tziyanim what's the word there? Mitzuyanim. Huh? That today, all the mitzvahs are like chinuch. There's opinion that every mitzvah we do today is only a chinuch for what will come in the future.
Rashi brings it down also.
Right, in Vorim, yeah. Yeah.
And all the mitzvahs we do, we shouldn't forget.
Right. So it's a training. But don't ever take away. Without the training, a soldier can't fight a war. So it's like what the Tzemach Tzedek said about Mashiach. Aha. Talk about it now. So then when it's told to you, it's not like, I don't know what's going on. So you open your eyes, you realize, this was always there. I wasn't aware.
That's why the Rambam praised the other guys.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to just go back now. So if you go back to the end of the Maimer, to the end of the first beginning, Evan Azes, so Yaakov's work with a sheep of Lavan. I'm not going down to Avram and Yitzchak. That's the discussion in the previous chapters. Yaakov's work is all paving the way for our Aveda today. So here's how it works.
Sheep said also Neshamas Yisrael. It's brought on Neshama.
Yeah, but he says here it's spoken more Yitzhak from Tainug Elyon, from Levin Elyon. So here's how it works. God created the world, Bereshis bara Elokim. He did it with a whole elaborate method, because as we've discussed many times, not that he needed it, for it to be a structured existence, for it to be an existence that we can understand God's process, and we can emulate it, and reconnect and retrace the steps. So there's a whole order. And even it's hinted in the Psukim. Bereshis bara Elokim, Shemaim v'sa'aretz, Elokim is the Tzimtzum, then Vahi is like the Kav, you have Toyu, everything is there. The world covered in darkness. Then begins that's the way God put into motion existence the first time. So the Eitz Chaim says, it's a question, you may have seen this in Chassidus, the Eitz Chaim says, isn't the whole existence dependent on us, on our work? So it says the first time was halos man minei obey. You ever hear that expression? Halos man means the effort from below. But how did that happen before creation? There was no one below. Knows who awakened? We say every Rosh Hashanah we have to awaken God's desire to want creation. Who awakened it the first time? So it says he awakened it within himself. Right. That this is called halos man. In other words, the first time it was like the nekeva within the zachar itself. You understand that type of thing. Sometimes it says, but remember, even the benim nimlach is also God initiates. So there's no tzaddik hanging around there. It's God's envisioning the tzaddikim that will come. So the bottom line is that's Nesav HaKadosh Baruch Hu that God desired tachtenim. So this is a desire that's all the way rooted in Atzmos. And then the Eitz Chaim says, it says Avatai v'shtok in kasha. Let me just say one thing. What you just said is the classic, not to suggest you're this way, the classic arrogant statement of a yesh. Like you're assuming explanation is necessary, so it's not explained. He created explanation. The one who created explanation doesn't need an explanation. You understand? Explanation itself is a creation. So you're saying it's not explained, right? You're saying, in other words, he did it, but he didn't do it perfectly because he didn't really explain himself.
No,
1 second.
That's how we all see it.
No, I'm not saying this to criticism. I'm just saying I wanted to point out a good example how our language is wrong. We don't think the straight way. We have to think the other way around. Who said explanation is needed? He created explanation. Why did he create explanations is really the question. That there's no explanation.
He wants us to understand.
I once wrote an article, is logic logical? Who decided, someone has to make logic logical. Just because we're the yes thinks we are it. So you think, if it's logical, then it makes sense to me. If it's not, it's not for me. Who decided that logic is logical? That's.
So there are more paradoxes in the Ruchnis now.
Well, there's no paradox at the end of the day. There's no real paradox there. When we're at peace with that, we're fine. Listen, that's why we're married, and marriage and the real life teaches you that paradoxes are normal.
Ultimately, in Chassidus,
You don't know about that yet.
There's no. I still like the words.
The words sound good, right? You like Velvet Green said, I like to hang around the paratroopers, right? You know that one? You never heard that one? And he spoke for the Kinnis HaShluchim? Oh, brilliant. He says, I'm not a shliach, but there's the story with the paratrooper. The guy trains to be a paratrooper, so he goes up there, and they're jumping, and he's looking. You know, you observe and see how first you load, and how you do it, the method. Finally comes his turn after a month of training, and he's all proud, he's going, he's walking, gives one look down, oh no, I'm not jumping. You know, it's pretty scary. Okay, we understand this. There's also, your type also comes around another month. Fine, another month of training. Okay, this time he's really ready. He goes, no, he's not jumping. You know, I'm done with this, making this long story short. So the commander says, listen, Yankel, this isn't for you. You should go down to earth and find yourself another position in the military. There's plenty of administrative positions. This, you need to have a tough heart here. You need to be tough. So he says, no, I want to be here. He says, why? He says, because I'm never going to jump, but I like hanging around people who jump. So Velvet Green says he's never going to be a shliach, but he likes to be around them. You know. Didn't mean you, but that's... So the point, I want to just say, so what he says before about Yaakov and Lavan goes like this. So the first time God did it all, He created the Tzimtzum and the Kav, and the Ak, Akudim, Nekudim, Vrudim, Tayu, Tikkun, everything is set in motion by the divine code. Okay, let's put it this way: the source code, coming all the way from the root, from the source. But then he says, Achla. Achla is after the beginning of the halos maminei bay. Atole, Hamilsa Tole, what's the lashon there? Hamilsa, the thing is Tole now in you. That's the Zohar. Istaku baraisa bara alma. God looked into the Torah and created the world. Then He gave us the Torah and says, Yisrael, istaku b'Torah baraisa v'kayim alma. And we look in the Torah and we sustain the world. So yes, there's always going to be a minimal amount of energy that's going to sustain existence, which is the question that's asked that we learned earlier too. Rosh Hashanah, what happens if we don't do our Aveda? Will the world stop being? So it says no, but it will be like a sleep. It will have the minimal energy. It will be like, think of the minimal code entering existence just to keep it alive. Right. Like we're asleep.
So we don't do exactly what it is.
That's what it says.
That's what it is now.
But remember, you have to take accumulatively all the Aveda that's been for thousands of years. So it's already not asleep for that reason. There were enough people. Even if you but you can't depend on them because you got to do your work. So bottom line, when the Rebbe says, for example, the Geula is here, it could be here. But if you're asleep, let's say the Geula comes. The Geula is right now, this morning, 10 a.m. is announced. But you're asleep. And your wife forgot to wake you up. And everybody goes to Israel, you wake up, and there's no one around except Caribbeans. Or whatever. What are you going to do? You're going to ask around. What happened? They say, I don't know, but everybody left. I'm just giving you an example. Now let's think of it spiritually. Let's say you're awake physically, but you're spiritually asleep. Which frankly is much more likely than physically being. Physically you could be up, but you could be spiritually asleep. The Rebbe said then, the Rebbe wrote to Zalman Garari, some people sleep with their eyes closed at my Farbrengens, and most with their eyes open.
The Rebbe said everywhere is wrong.
I understand. Listen, you're not off the hook until you're one of those Jews that doesn't go out and climb up on the Empire State Building or the Brooklyn Bridge and announce that the time is now. Doctor, you're asleep. Okay? Okay. So the point, but that's what it is. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. You just kiss us tomorrow. So we learn in Tanya that the Eibush is Mahava, Machayim, Mekayim every second. Right now, this table, you and I are being renewed from as new. We all know we don't feel it. We all know that we're confident that we're going to be in a second from now existent too, even if God chooses not to will it. But we understand it. You learn Chassidus, it makes a lot more sense that the energy is being renewed. But we don't feel it. But we're told that's how it is. And the more you learn it, the more it becomes something that at least cognitively you can relate to. But the fact that you can cry, at least to know I don't feel it, is also a pretty good madrega. Because most people doesn't bother them. The whole thing is just a theory, at best.
They don't know.
Right. So the point is that we have to be aware at least of this thing. So of course, if you don't see the minimal chayas that's giving life to existence, you're going to see the geula. You know, that's how. Now I'm not saying this to depress ourselves. It's on the contrary. Have the cure is knowing the problem. The problem is that we're not awake, and that's it. Let's not kid ourselves. Don't call yourself awake. You're not awake. We hear that we're not awake at least. Now the question is, how do you wake yourself up? That's why, and not that I challenge, but anytime someone tells me it's just going to happen, to me it disturbs me greatly because it means you think you're awake. You decide you're awake, and the only problem is someone else. Maybe you got to tell yourself you're not so awake as you think you are. You're not so aware and conscious as just because we heard the Rebbe speak. So what? I heard the Rebbe speak. It doesn't mean that suddenly I believe the Rebbe, but it's not like I suddenly see the chayes everywhere. The Rebbe Rashab in Teres Sholem, by the way, they were by Farbrengen, and he's talking about this idea of seeing a lakus. And he was so clearly the Rebbe was such beseirus. He said, "Bring me a plate, and I'll show you the Dvar Hashem in it." Yeah, the Rebbe Rashab said that. So they brought him a plate, and a second before he said, "No, he's not going to do it." He says, "Because right." Exactly how I felt. And so I wonder why didn't he do it? First of all, what was the consideration? Then he said he's afraid you're going to be megashemit. That's what he said.
Megashem what?
The experience. In other words, you won't really get it. You'll think it's some magic trick or something. Like okay, you'll see like whatever. You have to be. It's not like he could show it to you. Either you're ready or you're not. That's the point. You can't force someone to see elikus. I could force you to see behind what's behind the closed door, but I can't elikus. I assume that's what he meant. So my question is, what's the havamina? Why did he think that it could be possible? So either it was because the Rebbe had rachmanis and he felt, maybe he can lift everybody to that level, and then he gave a look at everyone and saw that maybe it's not so simple. The problem is not the plate. I can't get all the elikus in you. Then I could be. That's That's the word. The plate is fine. I could reveal it in the plate, but then maybe he opened his eyes and said,
I would be able.
It's like Yonah. He was afraid of embarrassing it because he can arouse it in the plate, but maybe he can't arouse it in his chassidim.
Exactly.
So it's like Yonah running away from it.
No, that's a very, I think that's the reason, because the plate has no bchira. You guys have bchira. The plate is just a plate. It's in Torah Shalom. It's amazing. You read that piece. I also, first time I read it, I said, wow, what happened next? Too bad. Okay. But then I realized that the fact that that's printed and that too tells you something. That you got to do what you got to do. There was a bacher who came into the Rebbe the first year. I guess he was a little, I don't know, maybe some people say he saw things. Some people say he was a little, and he either had a missing screw or an extra screw. Let's put it this way. No one's really sure. So he said he heard a mime that the Rebbe said, and he went to the Rebbe and told the Rebbe that when the Rebbe said the mime, he felt Einoid Movade, literally bouncing off the walls. So the Rebbe said to him, this you should keep between you and me and not share with anyone else. So the Rebbe's interesting way of, he didn't tell him you're crazy or something, he said to him, some things you don't have to say. And even then, you have to wait a few years. When did you start telling your wife? When did you start telling your wife about your visions? Okay, so let's go back here to Saint Lovin. So here's the story now. So once God put the plan in motion, so He keeps a certain. Think of it like this: the kav is obviously a transmission from above, so it's always going to be a little electricity is entering the machine, but minimal. Now it's all basically up to us. Geula for sure.
It's like a computer in sleep mode.
Yeah, exactly right. So you have to do something. You got to press a button. So now we press the buttons. The others began, as I said, they pioneered and paved the way. So what buttons did they press? Chesed pressed the button of Chesed. I'm sorry, Avram pressed the Chesed button. So that's what the Sefer HaBoyer says. That the Chesed Atzilus says to Hashem. Chesed Atzilus says to Hashem, listen to this. What do you need me for? You have someone walking on this earth who's Chesed. You hear this? So Chesed of Atzilus is telling God, you don't need me anymore because you have a person walking on earth who's Chesed. He's a walking Chesed. So obviously the same is true with Yitzchak, and the same is true with Yaakov. What's Yaakov's Avodah? Teferes primarily. Teferes is Kavam Tzai. It draws down not just regular energy of Chesed and Gvura, but from the source, Keser, all the way down below. That's why Yaakov goes to Charan. That's why Yaakov's life is far more difficult than Avram Yitzchak's. That's why he lives less. He says when Pari asks him, how old are you? He says, I lived short and painful, difficult years. Short relative, 147 compared to 175, 180. But mainly because Yaakov's Aved is Yud Ekev. He takes the Yud from Primis HaKeser, or Chochmah, all the way to Primis HaKeser and brings it to Ekev. He's the only one that has a brother like Esav. Now, Yitzchak had Yishmael, but Esav is his twin. Bottom line is, and Yaakov is the one that goes to Chanaan for 20 years. He's essentially paving the way for Golus, really, our work in Golus. Avram and Yitzchak relatively were not really in a Golus. Each time they had their challenges because everyone has overlap. But Yaakov is the biggest symbol of the real Golus, the fighting with the angel, Esav, his Lavan. So when you say Yaakov tended to the sheep 20 years, what was his work? His work was being mamshich. Not the way God did at creation. He's the one that's drawing down from Levin Elyon, which is the supernal whiteness, which is essentially from Tainuk, from Keser. He's drawing it into Akudim, Nekudim Brim, which is Biyah HaKlolim. So he's taken from Atzilus, from the root, Lifnei Tzimtzum. You could say he's like the Kav. Yaakov is sometimes compared to the Kav. Yebaka. He's also Yaakov Yud Ekev Yebaka. He's a piercer. He pierces. He pierces the darkness. And he brings, first of all, from Lavan Elyon into Atzilus. Well, Atzilus Pratis, but Biyah HaKlolim from Atzilus, which is Akudim, Nekudim, Vrudim. First 10 energies in one Keli, then 10 energies in 10 containers, then the scholars, the whole unity and alignment in Atzilus.
Akudim is Atzilus HaKloli, right?
No. Atzilus HaKloli is Lifnei Tzimtzum. Ak is Bria Kloli, Akudim Nekudim is Yitzira Kloli, and Atzilus and Biyah Pratim is Asiya the Klolos. That's how it usually works. Sometimes Atik and Arich of Keser, of Atzilus, is Yitzira de Klolos. There's two really ways. There's a mimer from the Tzemach Tzedek called Lahavin, from the Alter Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek is Lahavin, Drush Gimel Minei Adam, it's called. It's printed in Bala now in Ahirated in Yonim. Ami Mana offer Yankov, yeah. And Yaakov, yeah, also. Teira, no, Balak in Eira Teira. If you have Eira Teira in Yonim, there's a whole mimer right in the beginning there. It's called Drush Gimel Minei Adam. It's a very famous mimer where he spells this out. So bottom line is Yaakov is essentially really finishing the work of Avram and Yitzchak in setting up the blueprint for the Aveda with the world that we will do after Yitzis Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. That's the story. And that, as it evolves, his confrontation with Lavan, or his counter, is also this. That's why Yaakov's Aveda of lifting up Malchus is really the power, giving us the power to lift Malchus. Everything we're learning about Yaakov is really essentially the chinuch, as I said, the education before Matan Torah to the work we have to do after Matan Torah. And it's all a step after. God doing it is God wrote the Torah. It's God's Torah. But when we learn the Torah, we're Mekayim Alma. The Yaakov is learning the Torah. He's fulfilling God's plan. So Avram is living up to the chesed that God said in the Torah. Avram is living it out and manifesting it in this world. So it's a shutuf. We're partners with God in creation. God provides the resources. We actualize them. We stand behind the counter. God's in management. We're in sales. Let's put it that way. Okay?
Is there a group of people now that's loving?
And distribution.
We know Asa.
No, I take that because there was a guy on a plane, and the plane started having a lot of turbulence. So a guy says to Lubavitcher, "Aren't you you're connected? Can you stop? Can you get this going?" He says, "I'm only in sales, not in management." I'll tell you how we handle it. I can't tell you what to do. But we know, let's be honest, that Chassidus, sales also affects management. Because tzaddik geyser, because when we do what we have to do, we can make yehirats and we can change things. So we're not directly a man. But the sales have an impact on management.
Management will listen to a good salesman. Management will listen to a good salesman.
Yeah, exactly.
You get commission.
Management should be listening to the salespeople, because if not, they can mismanage. Okay, so.
But why would Yaakov say that my years are short and difficult when he's Tiferes? I mean, you would first of all, if he's the final Avos, it's giving us the highest, the final training. It's
a good question, because Tiferes has two sides. There's Tiferes as it's rooted, but there's Tiferes that also goes into Biyah. He's the one that deals with the tsar of. Remember,
he already experienced that.
But remember the fact. Let's talk first of all Begashmis. 20 years by Lavan. A big part of his life running from Esav. Then finally, when he wants to be at peace in Vayeshev, another 22 dinner, then 22 years of Yosef being sold and thinking he's dead. The only 17 years, it says, Tei, Vayechi, Yaakov, 17 years, Gematria Teiv, the only good years were his last 17 years.
But when he's saying this,
so you ask, one second. He's saying the party then, when he greets him then.
He's got RC.
Yeah, but he's talking about he's talking about 130 years of his life. He's saying, that, you think Yaakov forgot about his look, Yaakov knew his life was meant to be, you're asking the same question, why? Yaakov says, Bikish Yaakov, Leishav B'Shalva. Yaakov wanted to rest in peace, live in harmony. And God says, no, a tzaddik in this world cannot. So ask yourself this question, why not? The answer is because the world of Mashiach is not here yet, and a tzaddik can just be at peace no matter what. And Yaakov embodied the challenges that we will all have to go through. And that's as simple as that. So Tiferes, that's nice, but Tiferes has to still change the world, and as long as it doesn't, it's in Golos.
14 years.
Simple as the 17 years. The Rebbe asked, but that's the Malam Zman HaMokim. It's not counted in his years, those years.
Which ones?
Before he meets, when he's on his way. It's not counted, but his years, Begashmis, is considered L'Malam Zman.
Those 14 years?
Yeah.
What, you're not in the...
It's not counted part of his lifetime. Yeah. You have the calculations there. It doesn't fit in 14. No, it doesn't. In Chelikei, there's a whole sikha with Mefarshim and that.
Wow. Yeah, other 2 years that are not counted.
Listen, what are we being mathematicians here? He said that his life was painful. You want to argue with him? What do you want me to say?
I understand the line with Tiferes. And especially since when he's saying this, he's already seen that Yosef's still living. He's already seen that.
There's many sikhs on this. The bottom line is Yaakov passed away and Mashiach didn't come. That's enough reason. Forget about everything else. So all the work was done, but he still passed away, and they were just going into a difficult. And he knew they're going in a way. No, and what does it say in Vayigash? 1 second. when he goes down to Mitzrayim, when Yeshua says, come down to Mitzrayim, he doesn't want to go. Why? Because he knows it's going to be difficult. He knows, he saw the future. That's why he wanted them to take Yaakov back to Israel. So what does he say? So Abraham has to promise him, Yored, you go down, and Al-Naila, that one day you'll go back up, and the second Naila is that Mashiach will come, and so with that promise, that's why he went down. Or else he wouldn't have gone to Mitzrayim. So Mitzrayim, the question is the other way around, by the way. Why in the worst of the Ervis Haaretz, the lowest decade in the world, that's where his best years are. The Rebbe has the sikhs. But anyway, to go back to the story here.
It's very disturbing what he's saying about the Kehula, that it depends on us. It's historical thing what the Rebbe said. What is it? The Rebbe said the Mashiach is coming, and the Gula is coming. And Rabbi Simon is saying that it depends on us. Doesn't matter.
I'm saying the Rebbe never said what I said. You only quoted half the Rebbe. That's the problem that you just did. Where did you get? Second, I said it dependent on us. The Rebbe said I did everything is dependent on you now.
This generation.
Hold on. Did the Rebbe say it or not? Ask your question. Why did you skip those words of the Rebbe? I'm asking you. Why did you choose not to quote the Rebbe Chav Ches Nisan Tov Shin Nun Aleph? I don't understand what you're saying.
Because you...
Not me. Why did you skip those words?
Us. That's it. Period. So that could be another 10 generations.
That's your problem. One second. So what? Ask the Rebbe the question. What does he mean by Chav Ches Nisan Nun Aleph? I finished everything I could do. Do what you now you. You chose not to exclude that from your conversation, which is most disturbing to me. You chose what you liked and not what you don't like. And then go to Purim Mem Zayin, and he says it even more befedish. You could say, I don't know what to do, but you can't make such a statement 10 years. That to me is depressing, that a person like you, Chassid Shahid, chooses to take out the Rebbe's words because you don't like the conclusion. So you could say, I don't know what to do. But to say that the Rebbe said, that means he said, is there something to do? And you could say, I don't know what to do. But to say, you're making it sound like, to me, that Imreikum Bikemhu.
What was for him?
We'll listen to it, and then you'll tell me. Whatever he said, Chav Ches Nisan was double and triple strong in Purim Mem Zayin. And let's put it this way. As a Ish Maimin, let me ask you a question. The Rebbe Begashmis is not here right now. You are. Why are you here? Why did God keep you here, me and you? Why are we here on earth? To wait around for something to happen? Is that how we were trained? Let me ask you. You think that's what the Rebbe would want? Forget about what the Rebbe said, Chav Ches Nisan, for a moment. Let's put that aside. Why are we here? Tell me, just give me an example. Why are we here? The Rebbe said the Gula is already here. So why are we here? And why is the Gula not here? What's your conclusion?
It was always like this.
I asked you a question. What's your answer to this question?
All these people said that he's going to come.
No, but
I heard what you said.
So say you have no answer. That's all I was waiting. I know you have no answer. So say that. Don't tell me always. That doesn't answer a question because people have the difference is the Rebbe said now is the time, and no one ever said that. You just brought that.
The Rebbe said he is here. Mashiach is
okay, so my answer is, so why are you and I here and the Gula is not here? Tell me. Is that a question? What's your...
He's in the birds.
Anybody has any thought on that? So I have only one answer to that. I go to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said that we have to do something. That's why we're here. I have an answer. We have to do something. Now you can say you don't know what to do. Fine, so go and suffer with that. And my attitude is that there's no question there's something we could do, because the Rebbe said so, and we're here. We wouldn't be kept alive if we're not supposed to do something. I can't see that. That makes no sense. Our lives would have no purpose. And don't tell me we're here just to support our families and to eat gefilte fish. That's for sure not the reason.
I have no answer for your questions, but according to what you said, which I'm not challenging you.
Why don't you say to me?
No.
Why don't you say one thing? Do exactly what the Rebbe said. Maybe you should quit everything you're doing, sit down with 5 other chassidim, and say, I'm not going to stop the rest of my life until I figure out what the Rebbe meant I should do, and make believe it's your personal problem. Start with that. That's what I would tell you. You're not ready to do that. I know that. And most of us are not ready to do that. So let's just call a spade a spade. Say, I'm not ready to do what it takes. Let's stop saying my questions, because the questions to me become klippa then. Because the questions are really end up being, instead of pointing ourselves a finger who should be responsible, instead of doing that, we're saying, I don't understand. Why don't you just say, yes, we do understand, we're just not doing what we should be doing because we're lazy, whatever. Why don't we just, that to me is far more honest. What's your response to that?
It everyone should ask themselves this question.
Exactly. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to myself too. What do you think? That's why I've been talking about this. But by me, it's clear. By me, this is clear 21 years. As a matter of fact, I am far more guilty than you, because you have convinced yourself that there's no question, that's a question, and and it's not your problem. I feel it is our problem. That's the difference. I feel more responsible than you. But now I hope you feel as responsible as I do.
If we're bringing in Chavches Nisan, the Rebbe was already very positive.
By the way, I'm not trying to out-argue the point. Tell me another alternative to what I'm saying. I don't know another alternative. What's the other alternative? To sit around and pat ourselves in the back, we did everything, and we don't understand what the Rebbe wants. To me, that's like repulsive to me. Tapech everything. The Rebbe would never accept such an attitude. No way. Anything I know about the Rebbe that's what you do?
There is an alternative to it. I mean, not the right alternative. It's not the right answer, but the alternative, people can live a meaningful life, so to speak, and being frum in their life. I know we talked about frum earlier.
Yeah.
And without thinking about Mashiach and thinking like.
And then wait for the day. Okay, wait for the day to come.
Right.
But I don't know if that's what the Rebbe said either. I mean, I don't know if that's.
You're not saying to do that, but you're saying what is an alternative.
No,
That's
well,
not the answer.
You don't have to tell me. The alternative is what we've done. We have, you know, this happened. This is by default. This is what happened.
Sleep mode is default.
Right.
Sleep mode is default.
I can tell you, I'm outraged intellectually more than emotionally, to be very honest. That's why probably, because I understand al pi seichel exactly what I'm saying. Emotionally, I don't know if I lose any sleep more than you do. You know.
You certainly seem pretty agitated right now.
I am agitated because I'll tell you, because my mind is actually realizes the truth of it, and if my emotions are blocked, it's not because they're right; it's because they're just grub. That's right. So I know what I mean. I'm agitated that we are so that we can even be aware of this and hear it, and still not do anything. That's a pretty big agitation.
Yes.
If we weren't aware, it's like a person's not aware there's a problem. There's far less agitation involved.
I can understand too, because of your position also. You got more responsibility. You've been so close to the Rebbe all those years and all these years, and you've got a responsibility to convey those teachings. More than most. Right?
Well,
I'm not putting you down at all. I just say you got bigger.
No, but I want to just say this. I am convinced like this. I am convinced that there has to be those that can do something globally, like we talk about global,
Yes.
must do that. But I don't think everybody is global oriented. But they must do something equally revolutionary in their microcosm, 100%. There's no one's off the hook. There's no way that it's true that maybe Tzvei D'Rai that Rebbe said will end up being, but we don't know who those Tzvei D'Rai is. But I have no doubt. Remember, qualitative shifts can happen between you and yourself and your family. It doesn't mean that you have to be Mark Zuckerberg in spirituality and change a billion people. But qualitatively, yeah, that is for sure. That's for sure. You could say I don't know what to do on the global scale. I see, for me, the frustration maybe above all is this. I know the Chassidus that we're talking here, which we spoke before I spoke, I explained it like in physical terms. We live in a dark world. I know that it can be explained to everybody on this earth. I'm not saying everybody's going to be the first person to listen to, but I know it has the power to change people's lives. I know this from experience, not from belief, faith. So when I see that it's only reached 10,000, 100,000, you want to say 1 million people, fine. I don't think so. And I know Coca-Cola reached, and I know what some gurus have reached. That to me is extremely, my competitive edge is very disturbed. It's failure. It means if we're running the marathon, the Dalai Lama is here and we're here. And we are 4,000 years around with a Torah and all this, and all the Rabbeim. That should make you cry. That to me is failure. Now nobody likes failure. Trust me. I'm a very competitive. I like to win. And nobody likes failure. It's very painful to see that. I'm talking now purely begashmis. I'm talking about nachsidish gaiva, if you want to put it that way.
Netzach.
Okay.
When you are talking
Now you're saying. Now you could say to me two things. Hold on, 1 second.
Are you telling them that Mashiach is coming now in this year?
No. I understand that you have no idea what I'm talking about. Because when I say this is for everybody, you think it means I can tell everybody that Rebbe is Mashiach and he's coming tomorrow. I just gave a whole explanation of how you explain the Adal Ilmus to anybody in psychological terms. That to me is Chassidus. It makes no difference what words I use. Now, The argument that anyone can have against what I just said, you could say is, I don't see how Chassidus can be explained to the whole world. Fine. So then be happy with your life. I know that it could be, nothing that anyone will ever say can change that. Because that's like someone telling me that something I know is a reality. It's not. I know it could be explained. I have no question in my mind. And I know it can change people's lives. I've seen it. Okay? Through my book and through my work. So that's not even a question by me. But I absolutely understand that some people at this table or some people around will say, I don't think Chassidus can do that. So then I'm not going to debate that issue. I'll say, go try and then tell me if we're...
I'm asking you.
Do you believe that it could?
Answer me the question.
No, but I'm asking... No, because your question is completely not what I'm talking about.
Well, this is
What I just heard, you heard what I just said?
Yeah.
Do you believe this is possible? You're not so sure.
Of course.
So if it is, so then what's missing? Then we know there's something we haven't done. That leads me to the next conclusion. If someone said to me, there are people, they're Lubavitchers, I could tell you Shmom V'Shem Imam, who told me clearly they do not believe Chassidus is for the masses. They say barely hear people, anyone understands it. Some Maskilim Chassidus also. They think it's only for the elite. Like for them. So if someone says that, okay, so then the debate is, can it be done or not? Then let them go debate with Mashiach and the Baal Shem Tov who said, Yefutz Mayne Secha Chutza, and what the Rabbeim said. That's their problem. Because the Rabbeim said otherwise. Secondly, I know that it could be done, so I don't care what they say. So then the question is, if it could be done, that means there's something we haven't done. That's simple as that, from my point of view.
The marketing department.
100%.
Sales
And management.
No, sales
And management.
distribution.
Right. You see what I'm saying? That's why. So if it could be done, and that's what the Baal Shem Tov told Mashiach is the key. Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov is the key. So then, okay, it could be done. We have the chutzah. Today, I'll tell you what you could say. If we had no technology, you could say you need trillions of dollars to distribute it. And that's also been taken away, that excuse. Mm-hmm. There's no question. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, it's a whole different world. So that means then you need amounts of money, or you need access to the top media empires. Hold on. So to me it's like this. So the pipelines are there. That's clear. The information can be communicated to people. I know there's a need for it. The only thing missing is, what are we doing? That's why I say what I'm saying.
So I'm phrasing the question in a different way.
No,
When people want to know, are we now in a time that is close to Mashiach? I'm talking about people that are far from Yiddishkeit. What are you saying?
by the way, I have more problems with people who are what you call close to Yiddishkeit. The far are no problem.
Okay.
Because you see, look at you. We can't come in. We've had these conversations 100 times and we got nowhere.
But
For them, it's what you call far from Yiddishkeit to me is close to God, and they're far more.
Once you should say in such a situation.
I wrote a whole book. Why don't you read my book, Torah Miflat? That's what the Rebbe would want me to say, and that's what I did. It's not even a theory. Read my book, and that's what I said. And I have a chapter on redemption. You don't have to read the whole book. The chapter on redemption has been read by, I would say, a few million.
I think there are very strong votes, clear votes.
And why don't you ask me the reaction that people that you call are far from,
I know
quote unquote.
people are accepting it.
So why? Because it's bislapsus. Because it's very. Do you know in the 60s there was a whole awakening called, people were talking, they went talking about Mashiach. They called it the Age of Aquarius.
Oh.
They called it a new higher consciousness. Right. In other words, the idea, the most difficult people to communicate real Mashiach is to frum Jews.
What was the last point? What did you say?
The most difficult people to communicate true Mashiach is the frum Jews, because they think they have God in their lives. Huh? So they already have God in their lives. So what's missing? Okay, yeah, it says somewhere we have to also believe. But they think, and now that they have also kosher pizza shops and no gzeros, what's missing?
Pomegranate?
And pomegranate, right? Exactly. Not to mention pomegranate. Or Mamila, or in Jerusalem, Mamila. Right. I mean, I told you I met a journalist, a secular journalist in Israel. He said, "Let's meet somewhere with. Teach me something about the religious world." So I said, "Meet me in Geula Friday afternoon, like you know, if you know Friday afternoon there, it's like yeah." So he said to me, "What do you call this neighborhood?" I said, "They call it Geula." He says, "And what's Gullus look like?" So that was the picture. No, that's Gullus. That should have been called Gullus. What do you mean? That's Gullus. The comfort zone of Frumkeit. No, God should bless that Jews should only have comforts all their life. Don't get me wrong. That's not even the issue here. That's not what we're talking about. Chmon al-Tzlan. I'm talking about, but it's not Mashiach. That's it. It's two separate worlds.
It's a very good thing, but it's not Mashiach.
Look. Most secular people living in their Chumanis and Gashmis. People who are more spiritual by nature are open to a new, what's called higher consciousness. If you're talking to higher consciousness people, to explain Mashiach is a joke. You don't even need to say much. If you're talking to people who are lower consciousness, so you have to usually find an opening. Sometimes it's pain when they're suffering. Sometimes it's trauma. Or sometimes, you have that moment where like a magical moment, like a baby's born or something. But generally speaking, to pierce what we talk the levushim, going back to the levushim, to pierce this levushim, and really get through, is very hard. It's difficult. But we were told that the work was done. And all we get to do is our thing. That's why I'm not concerned with what you're saying. Because the Rebbe said that, tell me if that goes out. If the Rebbe said that the world is ready, see what I take is that, you take is that we don't have to do anything. And I take is that as being that the resistance is gone. And now you still have to do, because you still have to wait. You can have the messages already, the people are ready, but there's the link, the distribution link is not there. That's how I see it. That means if we do what we have to do, people will be far more receptive to it than we even can imagine. That's my understanding of the Rebbe's words, that the world is ready. Now, let me ask you something. This is not the first time we had this conversation. I'm just wondering, what do you take from what I just said? Do we go back to square one, or anything shifted?
I know the place that I'm walking, which is modern Orthodox, but it's the young generation that still don't shaped up their political views. Things are accepted even to say.
But that's not. But I'm asking you to respond to what I just said. Anything that shifts, because we've had this conversation. I want to know if anything I said now, or you're back, or your question that we began this conversation, you're back exactly where we started. I want to know if we made any progress here. Honestly, be honest. Anything I said that made any difference?
Could somebody answer?
No, you asked the question.
There's no progress because
I know that.
No, but there's a certain mental block.
So why is that? Why is that? I'm wondering
because
why.
that means he lived in a certain bubble for 20 years, and it's very hard to accept. That's why.
What do you say?
I'm just seeing it from the side. That's exactly
Yeah?
what I see. Yes, absolutely.
So what is anything I could say? Is anything I could say that would break
It's
through?
very hard for someone to admit that he lived in a certain bubble for 20 years, and
It's just I see it very differently. I see it totally.
And that takes time.
Practically speaking.
But anything that could be said that could.
I think he's feeling the frustration that you feel, but in a different way. And meaning that Rabbi Keitel wants so much the Rebbe and the Mashiach and the Gula.
They both want
and
it.
he doesn't
No question
necessarily. I know.
about it.
I say that they both want it, but I'm just saying that Simon has had maybe more experience on the global level, and Mashiach is a global. The Gula is a global movement, and you don't necessarily see how to do it in practicality.
On that level.
A practical
Physical level, he has to peel away layers and layers and layers of.
But you're more where he is, more where I am.
The Rabbi said our generation's going to experience.
Your point of
We
view.
have a lot of hours to discuss that.
Rabbi Jacobson, your point of view is we're not all capable of sitting in your place. We're dealing with a little.
No, because usually I'm a good communicator, so I'm just wondering what it is.
We understand you very clearly. I wish you would put it in summarize your statement.
Okay, fine.
You mentioned Rev Shabbos.
This rabbi was a shliach was overheard was in Idaho at the Sun Valley Media Meeting that Allen Company does. He was there, and it turns out that who walks in, Sergey Brin and the other guy,
Larry Page
from Google, and he's at the table at a restaurant. He's sitting next to them, and he hears these two big investment bankers from Allen Company who sponsored the whole thing. But they're 60-year-old guys, but they're very billions of dollar kind of guys, but they're 60 years old. So they go up to him and they start talking to him. I heard you're Google's doing something. This was like 10 years ago. Doing things, and so he starts speaking to him, And he says to him, he looks to him, and he says, you guys don't get the whole thing. He just walked away from him. Because they weren't talking. They were talking in investment banking terms and
I understand.
Of the 20s, and these guys are in the 20s and 18s.
Yeah, perfectly clear.
Tectonic shift.
I get that, but I think in this case, I honestly believe. Look. I speak to people all the time. I teach. I speak to people whose paradigms are very different than where I grew up. They don't believe in absolute things. Torah for sure is not their standard. The idea of a God that told us what to do is not, and not because I'm not talking about for good or bad intentions. It's their state of mind. And yet I'm able to get through to them because I reach to them in other areas where there is commonality. I talk to them about their emotional lives, their personal lives, the things they aspire to. And I don't let religion and Judaism be a block between us. That's the key thing. To find the doors. And through those doors, then I could say, I want to tell you something, and then say, happens to be the lesson from Jacob and Laban and Lavan. No problem. I do this. I'm good at this, making it relevant and so on. And then once they're dead, then they have no problem me saying it says in the parsha now because they see where it's coming from.
Coming in under the radar.
Under the radar.
Yeah, coming in under the radar.
No. Now I have more.
Stealth bombers.
Okay, personally.
Mashiach stealth bombers, Rabbi David.
No, but you see something. I don't really, something. And you'll see now what I'm going to say something which is going to be a little harsh. I don't find I have the same ability to do with frum Jews the same thing. There's no, you know why? Because precisely, you think what I do there is under the radar. And what I do there is actually reality. Because to me, religious words and Torah is a crutch that makes you comfortable. And with them, I don't use crutches. I speak reality. I speak life. But you call that under the radar.
Coming in under the radar.
No, I understand, but I'm saying, I know exactly what you said. But because you see that as being like, okay, so he has to package it. But the truth is what it says in the Torah. No, maybe that's the truth. And the Torah is code language that you're just using as a crutch to make yourself comfortable because you grew up with it. Instead of...
You mean a kli rather than the or.
Exactly. And the or is there because we're talking about real life. Talking about family, talking about that. The real Torah, Lashon Hara, is much more there. Here, it's more Torah, what Rashi says, and the commentary is more the technical that we are so used to. I find it far more difficult to do this with frum Jews for one reason. Number one is because when I do speak emotional and personal things, they're uncomfortable. Frum Jews don't like to speak openly like that. They don't talk about personal things. So they want me to talk Torah. Okay, they'll say, let's talk Torah. So you start talking Torah, so then we're back to the crutches. And we're hiding behind that. And when you speak humanly, on a human level, not everybody... Now, I'm not saying everyone. Trust me, there's many people in this community and others that are find it very refreshing when they hear the human side.
Why does the Fry world listen to the human side?
Because they don't have the helm of the comfort zone of Torah.
They live in a pretty good helm.
Yeah, but their helm is for other reasons. It's not, the Torah is not there. See, Torah gives you the excuse that you have God. Is telling you what to do. You're doing what God wants you to do already. They don't even think that they're not doing. None of them are saying they're doing what God wants them to do. They're not going to make such a statement. They don't even think about God. Here, so that's the helm. So I want to say no. So.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah. Okay.
Campaign should be secular.
What?
Campaign
should not be no crutches. Anyway, the point is what I'm leading to is, I find it far harder to do. In what we call frum and religious environments, far harder. With Lubavitchers, it's interesting. I tried it in Borough Park with the very Chassidish groups, and I challenge them directly. I say to them, "You're mechanical." Because I do it intentionally for shock treatment, and also I want to see if anybody there has ever even thought about it. Anyway, so that's what I do. So I do that a lot. Anyway, the point of the matter. Now. In this community here, in Crown Heights, Mashiach is definitely very, very difficult to talk about. Because here is a weird paradox going on. Everybody heard the Rebbe and everybody thinks about it. Some people are very passionate and want to do something. But the trap of how they see Mashiach is even deeper. In a way, a Borough Park crowd is not the frum crowd relative to Lubavitch when it comes to Mashiach. And the Lubavitcher crowd is more like the frum crowd comes to religion compared to the secular crowd. You understand what I'm saying? Because the trap of the words and years of just letting it harden into a crust is and the politics that people don't even acknowledge are part of it, makes it very, very difficult.
It's the gal rather than the tzeva.
Deep gal, right?
It's the hard
So like when you say to somebody, okay, let's learn Chassidus, and Chassidus makes you more keli telekus, and when you're more lekus, you're more Mashiachdik. So then right away, I'll tell you what the usual knee-jerk reaction is. Oh, that's what they always said. We always learn Chassidus. So what was the Chiddush? That's the response. When I hear that, like my heart wants to sink. So first of all, even if that's what they always said, so what? Since when? Because you're saying something that was always said. Well, you need to have a novelty. What do you need? Some type of gimmick? Yeah, that's what Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, and the Rabbeim never changed that. So what's so big? So what? And and Mashiach said to the Baal Shem Tov, that was a chiddush. You could also say, it always said that we'll learn Torah and we'll do mitzvahs. Mashiach is going to come. Well, so number one, I'm not disturbed that it was said. So what was it said? It was said, but it didn't penetrate, and proof is Gul is not here. And number two, there's stages from the Baal Shem Tov till now. A lot more was done, and the Rebbe is saying now it's far more easier. So when someone says to me, oh, they're looking for, some gimmick. Like, what do you want, a gimmick? Maybe learning Chassidus is you're learning a Lakus, and maybe start taking it personally to heart, which is one of the suggestions I made, that talk I gave. Maybe that's not the thing, and I personally think it is. Maybe the reason I'm getting more frustrated or maybe more aggressive is because I'm learning Ayin Beis, and I'm like more in the Lakus mode now. I'm seeing, and then I think to myself, you respect the Rebbes. We all think the Rebbes are right. And I asked myself, how long did it take the Rebbe Rashab to write this? The Gashmis. It wasn't a miracle. It didn't take him years. There's no way to write this without years. That means he decided that it was important for him
6 years
to spend his time, probably even more.
of just writing. Forget about no.
Right. So he spent instead of his time that he could have spent with Chassidim and talking to them and giving them advice to sit and write this was more important. Why? How many people learn this? How many people understand it? So, the Rabbeim were like out of touch, God forbid. And then, wasn't the Rebbe Rashab, you go to the Rebbe Marash and the Tzemach Tzedek, volumes and volumes. I mean, I'm thinking now, each Rebbe, 30, 40, 50 volumes of Rebbe. So that's 6 Rebbes is 300 volumes right there. If not more. I'd probably say a little more. And then throw the Rebbe into the Rebbe, add another, and the Igris and everything. So even on a very basic level, so is this not part of the equation? Is this all this is not part of the equation? And how much people learning really? And if we're not going to learn Chassidus, who's going to learn Chassidus? The people don't even know that the Rabbeim wrote it. Enough said. So don't tell me that we did everything we can be doing. That's to me ridiculous. And to start saying that the Rebbe said we did everything, and then all this, we should just wait around, I don't know. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Now the good news is that the Rebbe didn't say we have to finish the job. He said, do your part, and then something will happen. I have no doubt. You think a critical mass, you said not even 20%. You don't have to touch every person on earth to touch the world. You touch a certain number. You do your part, and then it could change the world, like the Rambam says. I mean, to say one button, one act changes, even one act can change, but definitely an effort. You think it's impossible to get through to people like Sergey Brin or Larry Page, who are global thinkers, and talk to them about spiritual revolution? They'd be the first people to be responsive to it. The question is, they may ask you, what's your plan? What do we do? But the idea, in 2 minutes, you get through to them faster than 1,000 Lubavitchers. I mean, I don't mean to say it that way, but that's how it is, because they're global thinkers l'chatchila. They just don't think of it, and some think also on a consciousness level too. There's no doubt about it.
Why do you only cite 2 times that the Rebbe was like negative that we have to do, but every other time, hundreds of times, the Rebbe said, the Sheikh is here, there's a Nasi here, there's so many things that swept along with this.
Well, hold on 1 second. Because they came together every time these 2 lines came together. They were never one half. You're saying one half, I'm saying the other half of the same sentence. There was no Sikha, the Rebbe just said that, and the Sikha ended there. Then he always said that we should do something. Open your eyes. Im D'Hachan Kulchem. Lilmud Dinyan Gul Mashiach. There's no such Sikha where the Rebbe ended and saying he's here and good Shabbos, everybody. There's never a Sikha ends like that. Every Sikha ends with a Hirah. You know, the Sikha the Rebbe did not call for action at the end? It's unthinkable.
I'm not sure, but what about this?
So I don't see it a contradiction, by the way. To me, as I said, let's for argument's sake say the Geula is right here, right now, and it's already here for 25 years, 22 years. Mashiach is here. But we're all asleep. What do you do then? What do you do then?
You wake up.
And everybody's asleep. There's no one to wake anybody up because everybody's asleep.
Somebody's going to wake up and perish.
That is more or less the status.
I'm actually something to discuss later.
What was that?
This thing that's
What did you
saying.
say?
The Dul could be here, but we're not woken up yet to it.
We're all asleep. Now, the question we could ask is, what do we do to wake each other up? That's the question. Now, I personally think most people think they're not asleep. They think they're still awake, so that's why they don't need to wake up. So then the problem has to be with the Rebbe. Then what the Rebbe said must be wrong or off, because that's how I see most people's relation.
Where does the rest of Klal Yisrael fit in? That's the question.
Who cares? I look at myself. That's all that matters. Do you think that Sergey Brin and Larry Page and Mark Zuckerberg thought about what the rest of the world is going to do? No, they knew what they had to do, and they had the competitive edge. As a matter of fact, they wanted to be there before the rest of the world were there. From my point of view, I'd rather be on the leadership here than be
Where do they fit in?
Klal Yisrael. Where do the 7 billion people fit in? I think it's like this. It's a bunch of random individuals that whoever's going to be Zeicha is going to open their eyes first, and the rest are going to be followers. That's how I see it. So I don't know who fits in where. I don't even know who it is going to be. To my point of view, is I think part of what has to be done is get it out there. So at least those that have the ability to understand can see it. To me, the big thing is there are a lot of people that don't know the message. If they would know it, I think a lot more people would come out of the woodwork than we think. I have no idea where they're going to come from. My likelihood is going to be mostly either young generation, even here, young generation, because young generation is not jaded yet, and blinded like that, or more secular individuals. That's where I see the hope. Young and less religious.
The young generation is not.
That's the two.
The young generation.
That's the two possible.
I think Mamish is true. If you touch secular people, the fry world.
Yeah, then the frum always go along because they do everything anyway.
Comfortable.
Yeah.
The young generation is not tainted by politics. The new generation.
Young people generally are v'heshav levav v'salbanim. In other words, it may be our children. So we're learning Ayin Beis. We're not learning Ayin. What are we doing?
Let's keep going. We might come to a good conclusion,
For Reagan. That's good for Reagan.
This energy should not be lost.
Tiferes.
So this all was a call to action, or what was this?
What's the action?
Till this point, I think it was not Dvarim B'Telem. I don't want to speak more if it's going to be Dvarim B'Telem. Till the point, we said what we said.
I know we're sitting here. I'm going to try, and today's a very good day. I'm going to try to make a hot potato that we will be able to do. Not something that's a little out of the box. Something that's going to lead us to the next one.
Okay, I'll do that.
You were a minion here.
You want to start Vani Hamaskil? You want to start?
No, I don't know where to start
from. That's the
We'll
thing.
start with the birthday man. Because the birthday.
We're ready for bringing in your honor. Abshleima.
It's a birthday.
You are invited.
5 o'clock. We're going to continue this for Rangan. Rabbi Jacobson is going to show up.
Since you're talking to the women, since you're talking to the women, I've changed what I say to people when I speak to them. I don't usually mention Mashiach. Try to talk about something about Yiddishkeit. And since I've spoken with the couple women, I've tried to talk to people more with the idea of the importance of Mashiach, but only in a mamish secular way, not the religious way. Mashiach comes, there'll be a better role. We should try to do something good. And the other thing I've been trying to do is to live in a more Mashiach, to look in a more optimistic way. And I haven't gotten any farther than that. But since you spoke,
I hear you.
I'm taking it very seriously. I took
Good.
it very seriously. I don't know how to, family idea, pick a day or something.
Well, it's good to hear. I'm glad.
But I'm trying to.
I have heard many people feedback on that. And it's online. You can hear it. It's audio online.
Yeah?
It's online. Send the link.
Yeah. go to, where did I find it? YouTube?
I don't know, I sent you a link. Yeah, send the link. Well, I'll say the following. Look, the frustration is sometimes like this. We have the luxury to sit around the table and feel like it's like, another like Sunday morning, relaxed, and so on. The thing is like this. My feeling every second around the Rebbe was like we were in the middle of a war. And we were a bunch of soldiers standing on the front and shooting, and there was an enemy. The enemy was apathy, ignorance.
You gotta give a third one. Apathy, ignorance, and...
What do you mean for my word quota? Apathy, ignorance, and complacency.
Disinterest. How about disinterest?
Okay, so you'll work on that.
I only know what ignorance
They
is.
not
What is that?
And dissonance.
Dissonance.
They don't want to be bothered.
Okay. So, no, listen. Video. Put this up on YouTube is also a shtickl aveda. Maybe someone's going to hear it. So here's the thinking. So this was the battle all the time. And I remember reading a letter from the Rebbe to someone. It's a long story, but to a woman, a mother, Chassidish woman, who was opposed to her children going on shlichus. It's a letter in Tafshin Tazayin, 1955. And the Rebbe wrote to her one line that I'll never forget. The Rebbe wrote to her that when your children who want to go on shlichus told me that you were opposed to it, because she wanted them to live by her, I was thinking to myself, how could you build an army where the soldiers have to ask their mother whether to go fight in the morning? Not bad, right? Okay. Since then, I never asked my mother anything, or my father. What I mean by that is, I start seeing myself, okay, we're on the front here, and there is a battle. The war is on every second. And I start looking around, who are the people fighting near me? Who are my comrades, right, in arms. And I met a lot of people, and I saw a lot of people who are hiding behind rocks. Some who don't even come to the front. They're busy, comfortable Sunday morning sitting and talking. And I said to myself, am I going to go fight? These are not people I want to fight a war with. They're not on my team. Because all they do is weaken me. They make me feel like there's no reason to fight, or there's that. So until you have a few people that are on that type of same wavelength, you don't really have like-minded people. And really, this turned me into really being much more a loner, to be honest. Not so much a loner, I communicate and interact, but it came to realize you got to know who's on that path and who's not. Now, I'm not saying this to toot my horn. Trust me, I've got my own challenges. It's not like that. But this I do know, however. Unless you have that compelling sense of urgency, you're not in the war. You're just a bystander. You're an observer. An observant Jew. Observing. An observant Jew. Okay. So, and...
Velvet green.
So, and let's put it this way. So when it comes to Mashiach, for sure that's the case. It's a war, my friends. And the Rebbe would say many times, there's no plateau. You're either going up or you're going down. Life is a mountain. There's no in-between. So I always say to myself, and I say this in many classes of mine, I say, are you part of the problem or are you part of the solution? So I remember years ago someone saying, undecided. Someone raised their hand. So I said, that's part of the problem. That's not the solution. So you're either part of the solution, you're part of the problem, and if you're undecided, you're part of the problem. For now, until you change, until you become like the guy that said, I used to think I'm indecisive, now I'm not so sure. That. So now I personally think that every chassid who saw the Rebbe, who knows about the Rebbe, who's touched by the Rebbe, is potentially a soldier. And many of them are in many ways. But we all very easily can go into comfort zones. Now, if the Rebbe had not given Mashiach that final, like he gave it to us as our final mission, so to speak, then there'd be much more excuse to be, more relaxed as things go. But that final mission the Rebbe threw in a monkey wrench that anyone that's really listening to the Rebbe cannot be quiet. It's a war. The war is not till it's over. If you just take the Rebbe's word that everything I did is for naught because Mashiach didn't come, that's right there is a war. Just to prove the Rebbe wrong should be enough to keep you going till the rest of your life. What do Chassidim do for Rebbes, you know?
Why do you use the term war? I mean, I thought the Berudim are over, and also...
Did you hear the enemy? But you heard the enemy I chose? Did you hear the enemy?
Yes, apathy against
Yeah, that's basically eyes closed. The enemy is eyes closed. Those three things close your eyes big time. So that's what I meant by enemy. Not enemy as an objective enemy, it's more of a psychological enemy. It is a psychological enemy. Thank God. I think that the Rebbe, the first Rebbe in history, literally in history, from beginning of time, from Chet Tzadas, that came into a world of freedom, where Jews were free. Think about it. Besides the time of Shlomo Melech, a few years. Yeah, but that was a small period of time and it didn't last, and it potentially could have changed any second, because he wasn't living in a peaceful world. He just happened to have peace in that period. Fine. But let's not get technical here. We're talking now, it's a different world today. And technology today, and everything. The first time, and till 1945, the Frierdiker Rebbe was on the run all his life. He became Rebbe, he was already basically almost under arrest, under the Bolsheviks. And then came the Nazis, and came this, then came America. So the Rebbe knew right away that the war, the real war, as the years rolled on, was going to be those three things I said, 100%. That's the war. It's a far harder war, frankly, than Cossacks and Nazis. It is. Because there it's a defined, you know who your enemy is, you know what they want to kill you, blah, blah, blah. This is far harder. This is Evidim Be'eretz Asher.
Oh, there it is.
No, Dochem Be'eretz Mitzrayim is the Nisayan, the tests of pressure and poverty. Asher is, exactly. And trust me, I think it's great every new kosher sushi shop opens up, or pizza shop, or Chinese food, whatever it is. Kingston's lately becoming really good food, and taking us a step back. Right, you don't have to go to Flatbush anymore. You don't need Flatbush for Gullus.
You don't have to go to the hood.
The Rebbe's words at the end of the Sicha Chav Ches Nissen that many people forgot was Larezgin from the Gullus Pnimi. Remember those words? So Gullus Pnimi. Golus Gashmi, Mashiach could be here. Golus Pnimi, Mashiach can be on your lap and it won't help. Because it means you're not letting him in. It's like he's knocking your door and you don't want him in. That's a whole different... the Rebbe said that, Golus Pnimi. That's a psychological golus. That's what it means. It's not a golus from an enemy that's keeping you in prison. It's your own golus. That's a big one. That's the big one, and that is the... I mean, I've said it many times, that our mentality is definitely golus mentality. That's for sure. Until you learn Chassidus, that can maybe free you from Golus mentality. Because then you see another reality. That's how I see it. That's the only real force.
Yeah, but you have another reality, and then you stub your toe, you get a toothache, and it overwhelms all that other reality.
Okay, so that's why we have doctors like you. To get rid of the toothaches.
Align the spine, the backbone, in the right way.
What about the...
I just thought of something. I was wondering this morning. I was reading the Torah Shalom, the Yutas Kislev Sikha of 100 years ago. Very interesting. The Rebbe Friedrich Rashab speaks Beremes, but he speaks about the big clip of sexuality. He speaks about it, and he says the answer to it. He says the sexuality. He doesn't say those words. He uses different lashonos. Pekam habris chutz kiyetz bezeh. And he says that the tikkun for it, because it's a pagam in etzem and not in giluyim, the tikkun has to be etzem and not giluyim. That's what he says. And that's chassidus. Because nigla the Torah cannot fight an atzmiz dika klipa. He can only fight giluyim dika things. More revelation, less revelation. That's what he says. And it's very, very cryptic. And the Rebbe has a footnote. I saw they have a footnote of the Rebbe's letter where he says that's Kinida. It seems like this sikha was not completely, the Hanocha was not complete. But now I read it and I realize the power. And that's what he speaks about the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was an Atzmi. Chassidus can only come from an Atzmi. Because you have to fight the klippos of Atzmi. You see what I'm saying? I mean, in other words, and it reminds me of something. I don't know why I'm saying it, but maybe, the things, the elephant in the room type of klippos. There was a guy, I don't know his name, he's a Baal Tshuva from many years ago. I mean, I don't like the title, but let's call it that. He came to my office. I was working in Hanochas. It was at least 30 years ago. 30 years ago, wow. What's 30 years ago? Now it's Ayin Gimel, Mem Gimel, Mem Gimel somewhere. Wow, Mem Gimel. Yeah, maybe even more than 30. He comes into my office and he's looking for a mimer. I recognize his face. I saw that he used to come from the 60s. Some of you may know him. I don't know his name. Anyway, and he's looking for a mimer, and I find him the mimer, and he says to me, I said, and I saw he's really excited about it. So he says, I love Chassidus. I said, really? He says, yeah, it's the best thing. But he was like really passionate. So I said to him, what do you like about it? He says, it's emes. It's the real emes. So I said, how do you know that? I didn't ask him more, not skeptically. So he said, because it was the only thing that was more powerful than Taivas Noshim. That's what he tells me. So I said, really? That right away piqued my interest. So I said to him, can you elaborate? So he said, yeah, he was on the campus. I forgot where he said it was. It was on some college campus in the 60s. And he says, and I had a lot of Taivas. And I had girlfriends. I was this cool guy and all that. And it was like, that was my center of my life. It wasn't the schooling. I went there for the girls. So he told me. And I said, and then he said, somebody came to the campus and gave a class or something in Chassidus. I don't remember who he told me. I was just intrigued by the thing. So I said to him, and what happened? He said, we started learning it. I didn't understand what was going on. And this and that. But I thought, I liked the ideas. So I came back a second time. And he said, and that started speaking to me, and it weakened my types. In Gashmis, I became less crazy. And slowly it changed my life. So I said, that's a big statement. It's weaken, you have a formula that can weaken that taiva, man. Nothing was ever able to weaken that.
It was old age.
You should speak to Mendel Marazov. Mendel Marazov gets up every week and says, "Was the main some will nicht? We can nicht." He says, Mendel Marazov says, "You think we don't want? We can't." He says, it's like an old dog. It doesn't have any more teeth. That's the problem. Okay. So anyway, so he's telling me this, and I said, "Really? Do you remember what Maimir you learned?" And I wasn't going to stop there. I wanted to know. She says, "Yeah. You have a Samach Vav here?" I bring out a Samach Vav, and he opens up to the page. It's a Maimir called Vayikach Ish Mebeis Levi. Parsha Shmois. Samach Vav. And he knew exactly the subject. It was not like some Chassidus changed me. He knew exactly what changed him. And I went and I opened it up, and he told me what it was. I couldn't believe it. You know what it was? The Rebbe Rashab asked a question. I mean, this guy must be he's definitely a sensitive neshama that he
taught it him was also amazing.
Not that because the guy who taught it him was jumping away from that subject. He was moving to something else. But he was touched by this. It was a question. It was a question in Maimir. Not even an answer, a question. The Rebbe Rashab starts in the Maimir, Vayikach Ish Mebeis Levi. No, Vayelach Ish Mebeis Levi. What's the lesson? Vayelach Ish Mebeis Levi. Vayelach Ish Vayikach Bas Levi. Right, Vayelach, right. It's Vayelach Ish, right, okay. Amram is going to Vayelach Ish. I'm sorry, not Vayikach, right. Vayikach, right.
It is Vayikach, but the second...
Yeah. But the Bible starts Vayelach Ish. And the Rebbe Rashab brings that we say in Shema, every day we say before Birchas Krishma, we say Kodesh, 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 and we say all with the Malachim and the Chayes HaKodesh, and they find the Rebbe Rashab asks a question. Neshamas are infinitely higher than angels, the Malachim. Why do we care how excited they get? Why are we excited by their excitement? We're far greater than they are. Anyway, he said to me, he doesn't even know the answer till this day, but the question blew him away. He said, how could someone ask such a question? That means a person really believes that he's greater than an angel. Angels are like great. That he should feel that the neshamas are higher than angels, to him meant that the guy living in a different reality. And that's what weakened the whole of Elam Hazan, this guy, the Taivas in him. Just that question is what it was like shifted his consciousness. And I'm telling you a story. It happened with me. 1 second. Okay, fine. I was like, I registered it. I didn't say anything. I just was like, and the guy doesn't even realize how unbelievable. Today too, by the way. Today too, it's the same thing. The neshamas don't change. Different situations. Then there was certain awakenings. Today, trust me, soul's a soul. Everybody needs love, and everybody has pain. It's nothing changes in that regard. Different world, a little different. So today, on the contrary, today you have much more distribution than you had then, so you could reach larger numbers, so you could find more people. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Listen. Fast forward 25 years. Not 25 years. Not 25 years. This is around Mem Beis. Nun Beis. Around Nun Hey. Around 15 years later, I'm taking my son. When did my son go to camp? My son was born Mem Gimel. Yeah. I'm president in Kingston by the bus. My son's going to Montreal. The summer. Parents, you all know the summer experience, schlepping in ISIS. Okay. I'm standing there. And I see this guy. Now he has a white beard.
How many years after?
15 years.
It must be 15 years later. I never forgot. I'll never forget such a story. Because I have a story of Chassidus.
He wasn't that old to begin with. He wasn't that young to begin with.
No, he's probably more or less like your age, probably. No. Yeah, what is that?
15 years ago, I wasn't that young.
Yeah. You ever see Dr. Langland? He was young and no, you
30 years ago. 30
No, he said 15 years
Did you
from
say
when he
15 years, some 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was 30 years ago when this happened. 15 years from then. Anyway, I go over to him. And I say, "How are you? Shalom Aleichem." Yeah. I said, "Vayelech ish the Beis Levi."
Wow.
You said that to him?
Yeah.
It's like Yaakov.
Without saying anything else.
Like
So he looked at.
Yosef.
He was shocked. He said, "How do you know that?" So I said, I'm a prophet. I see something on your face. No, that's a joke.
Yosef continued what they were
Anyway, so he said to me, he was like, because by him it's embedded in him forever. I said, maybe you don't remember, you came to my office. Vayelech ish changed your life, and your story changed my life. So he said, he's a humble guy. I know him for sure by face. He comes around. He doesn't live here. He's like so unassuming. You would never think. No, I never got his name, to be honest. And I know him by face for sure. It's like he has a schlumpy beard, and he looks like you.
Maybe he lives in Jersey. Maybe his name is A.B. Rosenhaus. Big supporter of
Morristown? No, he's not a Gevir. He's not Rosenhaus from Morristown. No. Next time, I felt, honestly, I felt uncomfortable really to pry in his. He told me the story, so. And next time I meet him, I definitely am going to find out who he is. It's not even relevant. I don't know if I would say his name. It's not maybe important. I don't, The guy's like he's like a guy like Shmerel, who teaches Nahal Torah. Yeah, these guys like tzaddikim nestorim that you don't even hear about them. That type of guy. They're not even on COL. Doesn't even know they exist. That's a good sign. Oh. Okay, so that was a complete Freudian slip. Yes, and they still don't cover him. What? Okay, fine. But these guys, they see them with the little kids on Shabbos after. These are like few.
When I was in Lubavitch Yeshiva,
Yiddish Shamayim, Durach and Durach.
When I was in Lubavitch Yeshiva, they went on strike over there. Rabbi Katzon was the guy who taught full days.
Yeah. I don't even know him. I see a guy sitting at 770 with like a Baal Shem Tov, sitting with the kids there. And everyone else is oblivious. Huh?
Barnett, Rabbi Schwartz.
Rabbi Schwartz is also, these are Panimis Dika guys,
Rabbi Schwartz, Tzvi Barnett, and
all the redheads.
Tzvi Barnett.
No, Tzvi Barnett's not red. I don't know Tzvi Barnett. Which one's Tzvi Barnett?
The Sefer, fabulous Sefer.
He's out of Chinook.
Yeah. They Nebuch took it seriously. They Nebuch took it seriously. You know that one? They Nebuch took it seriously.
And Pape, look at Pape, there's some teachings and how that is so unbelievable.
And you guys, what are you talking about?
See, if you had learned that mimer, it would have changed your life, right?
Anyway, why am I saying it? Because when I was reading today, now we're talking, I realize now. Yeah. So I realize now when the Rebbe Rashab says that you need atzmi. He talks about the Alter Rebbe as an atzmi. So he wasn't just a brilliant teacher and give you more giloyim. And atzmi breaks through things that nothing else can break through. So there he says beferish chassidus. So I know clearly the biggest clip of Olam Hazeh, besides I said apathy, ignorance, and dissonance, is obviously sexuality. But sexuality is not the root of the problem. Sexuality is what you get consumed with, and it then becomes a klipa that covers everything else off, because that replaces God. It replaces passion. It becomes the outlet. Sexuality covered or whatever, the few money, those few things. Taiva covered. But if you give somebody something that's powerful, that's why I know that it could work. There's no question in my mind. I told a nice guy tells me, let's not kid ourselves. Guys are into taivas and this, but you can suddenly give them chassidus and you think the world's going to change. So I say, so when the Rebbe says the world's ready, he says, that's not our world. That's not the world. It's a different world. But honestly, if a story like this that I just mentioned, it doesn't mean sexuality isn't powerful. It means chassidus is more powerful. That's what it means. And it could pierce. And you know what? That there maybe is a real God in this world, and God maybe really gave us a Torah, and really Torah could really break through. Most frum Jews don't know that. Most frum Jews are frum, but they have no belief that the Torah can change the world. For sure not. Goyim, they're Goyim. What do you mean? How can he change the world? They're Goyim, they're animals. Why could
They haven't made this for reality.
Novel B'Rishus HaTorah. You know this word? You see this court case going on now with Weberman. Nuvalim B'Rishus HaTorah. It's unbelievable.
They arrested them Friday night. Pictures.
Fine. That's technical. Instead of admitting.
No, not funny.
Don't be shocked about anybody being caught in this. Trust me. So don't get your shock.
It's a big fight.
This is the worst of all of B'Rishus HaTorah that possible. When they fall to steal money, this is the worst possible in the veil that you can do. Doesn't get worse than this. And one of the reasons that Rabbanim all have a problem with it because they say it's everywhere in all our top Heicha Fenster. And if you open up the Pandora's box,
Why is it everywhere? What's the shade of
because they have no God. They have no God. You have no God, and there's no God. That's not kidding us. There's no God.
More than the secular world. They also don't have God.
But with God, I told you that's worse because you don't even have. Anyway, so that's that for today, huh?
Wow, nice.
What do you get out of this one today?
They had a whole thing because they Harayim took pictures of the girl in the courtroom and they
From the
told
beginning.
us who she was or
From the beginning, that summary on that one.
From years was a very aggressive Friday night. That's terrible.
Well, Yitzhak Kislev is coming up, so we got to do something.
Last night, Olsen, he's like 9 years old. He said that the Rebbe, he went to a Fabring and the Rebbe before he was Rebbe, and he remembers what the Rebbe said.
So so what do we call this? How do we title this class?
Call to action.
Pod V'Shalom Nafshi. So it's not really an IM based class.
It's not Pod V'Shalom.
The beginning was.
Work for Pod V'Shalom.
Okay, so fine. So we'll call this is laying the ground for personal redemption. Okay, good. Laying the ground for personal redemption.
Scattamo stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Gira musica, gira e non si ferma, come una galla do vento aita. Attira con narina, tamburello e abbacia come sua figliola. Scattamo stanotti, viri come balla, sutta e fanali chi si scidica. Ballamo stanotti, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolla. Sinni e Tunu, i voti si danno, tu na poco gli peputia. Sindaff e Tunu, i cappotti russi e si ricordano da notti buona. Scattamo stanotti, vini come balla, su te fanali chi si scidica. ballamo stanotte, salta come un'anna, chi pettini di luna in sciolta.